My name is Chenoa Egawa, and I live here in Kingston, Washington. And my mother is Norwegian, Swedish, English, and Scottish. And then my father was Lummi and Sklallam, Hawaiian and Japanese. And the grandparents, so my mother's father was Norwegian and Swedish, and then her mother was Scottish and English. And on the father's side, my grandpa was Hawaiian Japanese, and then my grandmother was Lummi and Sklallam.
How did your parents meet?
They met at Everett Junior College, I believe, up in Everett, Washington. My dad was going to school there, and my mom lived there with her family. And that was where a lot of the relatives on the Norwegian-Swedish side ended up after coming through into the States and coming into Minnesota. So they moved from Minnesota to Everett. Yeah.
All right. Let's talk about your upbringing. So tell me a little bit about what your upbringing looked like, and especially in relationship to all of the cultures that are in your family.
Okay. It started out that I was born in Ellensburg, Washington, where my dad was going to school, and he received his master's in education and photography and art. And so up until the age of 4, I believe, we lived on campus at the university there. And then we moved to Germany for 5 years, and he ran a big art center on one of the military bases and was the overarching manager of that place. So everyone who lived on base could come and create woodwork, metal shop, ceramics, jewelry design, photography. And so we grew up with a lot of art in the family, and we grew up traveling a lot. We had a little Volkswagen bus, and my dad converted it into a camper, and we got to camp all over Western Europe when we were kids. And we came back to the States. We came back to Seattle when I was in the 5th grade. And then from there we stayed in Seattle area, and it was kind of changing on that subject there. I remember as a child feeling a little confused about all the mixture of my heritage, because both of my parents made sure that we were a part of all the different bloodlines that we carried. And I remember always feeling like, I don't really look like these people or those people, or and I remember just wishing as a kid, I wish I was just one thing. But then later, I used to introduce myself and list off the whole thing and then just say, just all mixed up. And then one day I met a man from South Africa, an Afrikaner who was in the anti-apartheid movement. And he said, never introduce yourself like that. You have all these bloodlines that you're a part of, and every single one of them carries a strength. And so you have something special here. Don't look at it as this is not a positive thing. This is really positive, because each of the ancestors that come from those bloodlines carry something special, and you have that. So, be proud of what you are. And I remember everything kind of changed from that point. I was confused when I would look at the history and see what had happened to different ancestors. It seemed like a lot of tragic things had happened in all those bloodlines, and so I didn't know how to kind of come to terms with it as a kid. But later I realized this is a strength, and I can see how to bring it all together from many different backgrounds and see our common heritage that we have as human beings of one planet. And so it came to be something really, a power instead of a confusion.
Right. So you were talking earlier a lot about the arts in your family, things like that. Let's talk a little bit more about that. What are some of those traditions that were maintained in your family?
There was a lot of creativity with my dad. He was a person who always saw that art was something that continued to evolve. It wasn't something that was stagnant or just stuck in one way. So he would always tell us, look, art is always evolving, and every kind of influence that comes in, the people would integrate into their artwork. And for instance, through beadwork and things like that, beads were not a part of a lot of the tribes in the States, but when the beads came, it was integrated, and different art forms. And I think that there was always that evolution. And so with my dad, it was more painting and he was a photographer, and so it was about seeing art in every moment and just that moment in time or that place. In living in Western Europe, it was seeing all these different cultures and special moments that you might not see when you lived back in the States. And so he just had that creativity, even to take us as a young family all the way to Germany, not having never been there before, and living there for 5 years. I thought that was a really courageous thing. So he was kind of more on that cutting edge sort of. But when we came back from Germany, that's when we would go back up to Lummi and visit my grandma, my great-grandma. And then I started to learn more about the art and history and culture and the spiritual part too, the spiritual practices of our grandparents and our ancestors. And there was something in me that was more drawn to that, that was just a part of my nature that made sense to me, where there's something more in this life that I need to connect to. And so the teachings from about the earth, the teachings of how to work with the elements, the teachings of healing and what it means to heal the heart and the mind, and what it means to continue to grow and evolve within yourself, as something that came later, like for me on my own, more on my own through the years in college and meeting people from other tribes, and then being involved in different practices and having teachings from different elders that came from in-laws and some of my own family as well. But also through my travel, because I ended up traveling. The earlier time in our life, being in Western Europe, really opened a desire and a love of travel and seeing other cultures and meeting people and hearing other languages and seeing different ways of life. And so as a young adult, then I ended up going to Mexico and South America and started speaking Spanish and Portuguese, and got to go as an interpreter to meet with other people in those countries and look at preservation of culture, preservation of lands and ways of life, and human rights, that kind of thing. So there was a trajectory that made sense through the beginning of traveling and seeing a lot of people from different places.
And you're really touching a lot on this, which is the next one. And maybe more, if you could just list off a few things. What are some of the things that you learned from your parents or grandparents that you have carried through into your adult life? What are some of the traditions or art skills or things that you have brought through with you?
I think some of the main teachings from all the grandparents have been what it is to be a good person and to be a respectful person. My grandparents on both sides of the family went through a lot of different hardships and had to adapt a lot to the modern culture. And I think that they were just all very hardworking people, respectful, kind, had a love of nature, love of outdoors, hunting, fishing, hiking, camping, and being out in connecting with the land. I think that that's one of the things I received from my grandparents. And a loyalty and a respect to loved ones and family. And I think those are some of the main things. That we could do anything that we put our heart to. We were taught that whatever the challenges are before you, you have the ability to follow your heart, to follow your dreams, and to achieve whatever you can believe in. And so I think that all my parents and my grandparents had that perspective and really put that into our hearts. And yeah.
What does it mean to be Nordic?
From a Nordic standpoint, my grandfather was, I believe it was second generation Norwegian and Swedish. And I think he was half and half, but he would usually identify more with the Swedish side. And he was not someone who was like practicing the culture that he came from, but I could see what things he brought with him from his culture, from his heritage. And a lot of that had to do with fishing, clamming, crabbing, being out in the mountains, having a love for nature. He was fastidious. He was like everything was very neat and organized, and he was a really kind person, and helped raise a lot of the grandkids, helped one of his daughters to take care of her 4 boys, and pretty much raised them. Both of those grandparents raised the kids, and just the memories that they had, and the love and encouragement. I think that's, for me, having not been to Norway or Sweden, I could only see it through how my grandfather was. And so I feel that, the things that he showed me and the things that he helped all of the cousins with, and my brother and sister. And so that's where I carry it. And I see the connection with the ocean, with the sea, with fishing, with the mountains. Like one of the people have said before me, there's the landscape is similar. There's a lot of Scandinavian people in this area because it's similar and reminds them to their home. And so the coastal side and the Scandinavian side have similar love of the ocean and the connection to fishing, connection to nature. And I think for me, that's what I would say that it means, yeah.
Talk to me about what does openness mean to you, and how does it kind of resonate with you in your life?
Openness, I was thinking about this question and thinking of the opposite of openness and how the opposite is being closed, and thinking of the quality of what it means to be open, that things can flow, whereas being closed, it's very rigid and confined. And so for me, I was thinking about how all people are born open, open-hearted, open-minded, no matter where you come from. Children have that quality and that nature where they're not born with prejudice, they're not born with judgment, they're just wide open and curious. And I feel like openness is a quality, one of our best human qualities, to be open, to be curious, and to learn, be willing to learn from one another. And especially in this day that we're living in now, as we recognize the way that we have an impact not only on just our own home territory through our actions, but that we are impacting everyone around us, extending out around the world. And that it's time to have more openness and to hear one another, to listen to each other, to take the best teachings of all of our people, no matter where we come from, and remember our connection to the earth. Remember that we're given life through the earth, through the water, through the air, and come back, because I see that connection is being lost with just the way that our world is going, and our children are more connected to machines a lot of times than they are to the earth. But it's not a machine that sustains you, it's the earth that sustains you. And so I feel like being open is a quality that we need in order to recognize that everyone has some kind of goodness. And if we could bring all of that together from all the different places and help move into the future in a more conscientious way, that we have a chance to take care of this earth.
Openness, why and how could it be a universal value, not just Nordic, right? It could really, hopefully, we would want it like it to apply to everybody. So why is openness something that should be universal?
I think openness is universal whether we think it is or not. Just as I was mentioning, we are born with openness. We are not born rigid and closed, and we're born open. And when our eyes open, when our voice opens, when our hearing opens, there's an awareness of a connection. And I think that it's a high quality to have, and it's one that we need to come back to as adults. Our children are open already. As an adult, sometimes we forget that openness is part of our inheritance as a human being. And so I feel like it's already in us. We just have to remember that it's there and move toward it and embrace it. Sustainability.
Now, this is a big one, right? there's a lot of encompassing things to sustainability. So can you talk about what is sustainability to you? How does it resonate with you as a value, as a core value?
Sustainability, again, is looking at, I think, I like to think of gratitude as being in this conversation, because in order to sustain something, there needs to be gratitude, and there needs to be a recognition that this thing that is sustaining us is a life, is usually another life form, right? Maybe it's our family, maybe it's the plants, maybe it's the air, maybe it's the water, of which all of these things carry a life, carry a spirit. And so there's a reciprocity there in sustainability, that we need to be willing to take care of that which takes care of us. We are not independent. We are not individual beings that don't need the sustenance of all of nature that is providing for us in each and every moment. For instance, I get up in the morning and the first thing I do is prepare my water and acknowledge the water and say, this water has been here with me since the beginning of my life. It was the one that was here to help me be conceived in the first place through my parents, that carried the seed for my conception. And then throughout the whole time in the womb, the water was surrounding me and nourishing me. And then when it was time to be born onto the earth, the water broke and it went onto the earth. And then it put that seed of the child onto the earth. And then from everything I look around into the world, the water is there, giving in a way. It's giving to every living thing. It's open. Speaking of openness, the nature doesn't choose who it's going to give to. It gives to everything unconditionally. And so sustainability I see through nature. There's a cycle, there's a flow, there's a respect, there needs to be an awareness. How are we going to care for this? We love, all the cultures that we're talking about here are people of the ocean. How are we going to care for the ocean? We know what is happening to our oceans today. When we look closely or listen to the news on any given day, we know that we're destroying our oceans. And so what kind of awareness do we need to bring back to our children and say, this is not just for our taking. We have to give back. Giving and receiving is a part of the thing that makes everything flow. We can't just take. It's time to give back, and it's time to give back much more than what we're taking because of where we're at now in the world. I think that there's a lot of degradation that has happened, and I feel it's time we need to really wake up as a world citizen. I say that we're all in this together, and that we need to work together, and we have the wisdom and we have the teachings, and we just need to come together and accept each other and listen to each other and know that without the nature, we're not going to be here. So sustainability is changing. We have to change a little, and changing is also a part of it. It's like some of the elders say, everything's changing. Everything changes, and adaptation is a part of life. We adapt to changing circumstances. We adapt to, maybe we lose a family member, or maybe we have other things that are going on in our life. And part of it is we have to learn how to adapt and address the feelings and the emotions that we go through as a human being. But it's like really taking the time to look at how are we going to change our ways so that we have sustainability. And so that's one of the things that I like to teach about. And I think it's important to teach kids. It's important to teach families. It's important to change educational systems. What we're learning in the schools is not necessarily of value. I like to say that if it doesn't have to do with preserving and protecting all life, then it might be missing the boat today. Because without the world, without the water, without the oceans, without the earth intact, we might not be here as humans. And so education needs to change, because education has had a goal of certain things like competition and It's just extracting things from the earth that is not sustainable. And so how do we come back to sustainability as opposed to just taking and for profit? And I think that profit is behind it a lot of the times. Power and profit. And not caring about others, and not being open to other people, and not being open to other beings. That sometimes we just talk only about humans. And what about all the other living things that we share this earth with? The forests, the birds, the animals, the fish. There's so much life, and it's all interconnected. So without one, it starts affecting the other. And so the balance starts going, and then the next thing you know, it's not sustainable for life. So that's kind of a long...
Great answer. No. You touched on everything, so no, you're perfect. And this is, again, this is another one that has a lot to it too, which is social justice. Social justice has a lot to it. So let's talk about that one as a core value, and again, how that kind of resonates with you.
Okay. So social justice, again, is tied into the other values that we've been talking about. It is, when there is not social justice, there is a preconceived idea that somehow some people are better than others and some people have a higher value. Well, the way I understand it from my elders and my ancestors is that everybody is even. We're all equal. And so it's that humans have so many good qualities, and then there's some that confuse me sometimes. And so it's really, how are we, in order to have social justice, which we absolutely need to keep moving in that direction. It's been going on for quite a long time that there hasn't been justice. I think that we need to find ways to, again, have those conversations and be open. I feel like there's ways to communicate with people, because sometimes if you're attacking people because there's no justice, then you just shut them down. But there's a way to talk openly, because at the core, I think most people that I've met care about the same things. And that fear is one of the ones that are the main emotion that might play in a lot to the lack of justice. Fear, and then wanting to hang on to power, wanting to control, wanting to... It's a rigidity. We talked about openness, and then it's a rigidity that to me is closed. When there's not social justice, it's a rigidity that makes you... It actually is preventing you from the wonders of what it is to be alive, with all the different ways and wisdom of thousands and thousands of years of elders and ancestors and family members and cultures and languages. That if we just are so small and we can only see our own justice and everyone else forget it, then we're missing a lot of richness about what it means to be alive, because there's so much beauty from every culture on this earth. There's so much wisdom and beauty and stories worth hearing, worth telling, and those stories contain the teachings that our ancestors went through from every culture. The stories are the ones that show you, what does it mean to be a good human being? Why do we have those stories? Because we know that justice is a part of this life. And so the stories remind you. They remind you who you are, where you came from. If there's a character in the story that is not abiding by the best behaviors, then that's a teaching. That one is how you don't want to be. This one is how you're meant to be here. And so I feel like the lack of social justice is a part of forgetting. It's not remembering our true nature. And so I think that social justice is also killing our planet. The lack of social justice is killing our planet, because there's a lot of systems of wisdom and understanding about plants, about the seasons, about what changes happen at different times of the year, about how to live on a daily basis in accordance with nature. And when we forget those systems and we just go into the higher mind and we forget the heart, then we are now forgetting how to be in harmony and balance with all life. And so every culture carries a piece of that. Every culture carries some wisdom, and we don't want to all speak the same language. We don't want to all have the same. I don't even know if you could call it a culture. A Western model is not really culture. It's forgetfulness and disconnectedness. To me, it is, and I think community is important. I think opening up and having opportunities to meet people from different places is extremely important. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot, but I know it's complicated, but I believe that it's possible to come to a place of social justice, a better social justice in this world.
Perfect, yes. Okay, the last one is going to be innovation. And innovation being encouraging creativity, resourcefulness, and new ways of thinking. So talk to me about innovation and how that is, a key core value, and how that resonates with you.
Okay, innovation it comes from that curiosity again. So all these questions are sort of connected to me. Innovation is the ability to see something with new eyes. And so again, it also relates to being open, because you're open to seeing something in a new way. Like one thing that I keep seeing is that we have everything we need in order to take better care of this earth, to take care of each other, to take care of life. And we just need to make a minor shift. And if everybody could make a minor shift that would be towards a purpose of taking care of life and healing and restoring the natural balance of what we depend upon for life, the living nature, then we could work together and come up with entirely new jobs, growing our own food. A lot of it comes from the past as well, but I think in a modern world it has a slightly different way. But I think that the way I see it is that everybody has a skill. And what is that skill being used for? Like telling a story here. Do we tell stories that are going to help us evolve and to help us to have social justice, to help us to have sustainability, to help us to have these core values? Or do we tell stories about destruction or some stupid movie that doesn't do anything for anybody except for numb you, So it's like every job has the capacity to awaken a person and people, or to just keep them stuck where they're at. And so this is the innovation I see. It's like every job has this possibility, and every person has this possibility. And so I think that I always feel like sitting down and saying, look, let's just all shift our work a little bit. We need to work together. This is not a job for one person. Let's be innovative about caring for the earth. That is my message, because I feel like that's what I'm here for. I talk to the water. I get up. I talk to the earth, and I say, what do you want from me to help you? What do I need to say? What do I need to tell people? How can I be helpful? How can I have those words that are going to come across so that people can hear what I'm saying, and that maybe something will shift in their consciousness so that we can become aware of the spirit of the water that is helping us live and thrive. I remember being in Iceland one time, and we went up to these glaciers, and we went out on a boat, and the man was telling us, see this glacier here? In 65 years, this one's going to be the lagoon. It's just going to all have melted in 65 years' time. But this ice, it's been here for thousands of years. And there were big chunks of ice that were floating in the smaller lake that was there. And one of the crew pulled out a big chunk of ice, and then she had an ice pick, and she was giving each one of us a piece of ice. And she broke off a piece for me, and it was shaped like an arrowhead. And in the ancient stories of the Dene people, they talk about, from the beginning of time, the arrowhead was used to protect against the monsters, which you could think of as like the dinosaurs or the different. There were a lot of really violent creatures on the earth at that time, and I held that in my hand, and with the prayers that we do with the water, I realized this water has a memory that comes from thousands of years of existence on this earth. All water does, but here this one has been sitting in the glacier for this amount of time. And so I just prayed to the water, and I prayed that it would be a source of awakening, and I could help somehow, just wanting to be helpful somehow on this earth, and acknowledging its spirit, acknowledging how it holds the memory. And as Indigenous peoples, we've known that the water holds the memory. And now the quantum physicists are saying, hey, the water holds the memory. And so it's being understood by everyone now that the power of water is it's not just something that flows out of the tap, or that you go get somewhere and do whatever or toss it aside, or it has a spirit, it has a power. It listens, and it transforms itself to become that which we need. It's one of our first medicines. And so in just thinking about that, innovation is ways of bringing in the ancient teachings about how to live in harmony with this earth in today's world of modernization and capitalism and kind of disconnection. How do we come back? And I feel like it's those experiences and those stories that are and sitting down with kids and saying, okay, this water, it's a spirit, it's going to live, it's going to listen to us. What do we want to say? How can we pay attention? Take them out and show them the streams, and show them the fish that are running through those streams, and what is it that we're putting in the water? Is it helpful? Is it harmful? We have stories about the salmon. The salmon, they're not just people like us. I mean, the salmon are not just fish. The salmon are people like us. And in our ancient times, they made an agreement with the human beings, and they said, we'll come back up the rivers to feed you. But this is what we're asking in turn, that you respect us, and that we come back up the river, that you make an offering for us, and you give your thanks and your gratitude, and you take care of the water. And then we'll keep coming back, and we'll help support you and nourish you. But this is the reciprocity that has to be there for us to have this relationship. And then we'll take care of you. So really remembering that life is a responsibility. It's a sacred gift. And that it's not by chance that we're all here. And how would we make the best of it? How do we be of service to life? And so I think about that every day now. So this is the book my brother and I worked on together, co-authored and co-illustrated, called The Whale Child, and it came out on the 20th of October in 2020, and then I just completed a narration for the audiobook that's coming out in April 19th, and this book is about our oceans. And it's through the eyes of this main character here, the whale child, who's born a boy, a young whale. And through the wisdom of his mother and those that came before him, he's chosen by the spirit of the water to be transformed for a short time into a human boy, to meet his family on the land, because his mother says, we're all related, all of us are related. You have family on the land as you do in the sea. And so for a short time, he's transformed into a human boy. And through the power of dreaming, the mother whale sees the dream and sees the human mother and the human sister that will meet him and accompany him on shore. And then the mother on the land has the same dream, so she knows he's coming. And so she brings the little girl down to the beach in the morning, and he's transformed into a human boy, and he swims ashore. And they know by the dream and by what he tells them that he's there to give them firsthand knowledge about what's happening in the oceans, from what he's seen as a whale traveling with his mother from the Hawaiian Islands up to Alaska, what he sees along the way, the contamination of the oceans, by the humans that live on the land. And so he's teaching his little sister what it means to be a caretaker of the earth. And so she's also a Coast Salish character. And so we've made it so that the little girl will then be teaching all the other children. And so we're saying this is a core value of being a native or indigenous person, that we are caretakers, but we want all the children of the earth to be caretakers and to remember the joy of what it is to be in nature and to commune with nature and to see all the life that comes from the natural world. And so the story is about that, is how all our children can become caretakers of the earth and the oceans. Okay, so the last, I've been talking a lot about just the earth and nature and reconnecting to the nature as a human being and the sustainability and being innovative in how we restore the harmony. And part of that is really remembering the seasons and remembering how the sun and the moon travel from day to night and night to day, and remembering how the stars move, and remembering the plants that come into season in the spring, and the runs of the salmon that come at different times of the year, and connecting back to that within our daily life. For instance, we have a teaching that says, get up before the sun and go out and face the east direction and make your offering to the sun, to the rising sun, because it's not a guarantee that that sun's going to come up for us every day. And one time someone was telling me, it comes up for us every day because at any given point in time, there are millions and maybe billions of people who are praying for the sun to come up every day. And I thought about it, and I thought about all the different cultures on this earth, and I was like, that's right. You think of, when you really look at them, their spiritual practices, that is a practice that goes across the whole world. And so it's our love and our care that makes the world go round in a beautiful way, in a healthful way, and being a part of the nature and moving with the nature. I think about it with our kids, and I think about it with the different kinds of sicknesses that are coming in our societies now, that are disconnected. Our food, where does our food come from? Where do we harvest it, and how is it grown? Is it used? Are there chemicals that are applied that are harming life? The pollinators, the waterways, the people themselves, and the animals that are in the area. And so, really looking at, I think, just adding in, it's about reconnecting to the seasons, and it's about reconnecting to the very basic things that are there every day that sometimes we overlook or we take for granted, that are the ones that are really moving everything. And then and one of the things that we say is the heart, come back to the heart. The heart knows, the spirit knows. The mind is smart, but just having a smart mind without a heart is not going to be very helpful. Or maybe off track a little. So I just wanted to add that.
So tell me, what is in your hand? What is that? Tell me about that.
The hand drum, it's made out of deer hide and has a wooden hoop, and it represents the heartbeat that is within all living things, the heartbeat of our Mother Earth, the heartbeat of every human being and every sentient being, and that vibration is like our own heart, our own heartbeat that we have, that we hear from the time that we're in the womb, and we hear our mother's heartbeat, and we have our own heartbeat, and it connects us back to the earth, connects us to the nature. It opens our own heart and brings the spirit in and helps us with every kind of activity and event in our life. Like some of our elders would say, as a human being, part of your birthright is that you're a singer. Part of your birthright is that you're an artist, and part of your birthright is that you're a dancer. And so all of our cultures originally have the songs and the dances and the artistry and the nature, the respect for the nature and the wisdom and understanding that the heartbeat is here and present, that we all share that heartbeat.
Tell me a little bit about where learning how to play the drum came from in your family. It sounds like there's been a long line of people in your family that have played the drum. So tell me a little bit about that and what led you to be such an avid drum player.
So my great-grandmother, Aurelia Celestine, was from Jamestown, Sklallam, over on the Olympic Peninsula. And in the end of the 1800s, she traveled with her parents and one brother. They had an unusually small family. It was just her and her brother. And they traveled by canoe back in the time when Lummi, the reservation up at Lummi, was being established. And they had an auntie who lived in the woods, and she was by herself. And she wanted the family to come and move with them. So the family moved up to Lummi and were enrolled as Lummi tribal members, but we actually come from Jamestown, Sklallam, too. And she would tell us, you're also Flathead and Klamath, and so a lot more intermarrying was occurring. And she's the one who taught us how to sing and to dance, and we have annual canoe journeys that happen, celebrations, the Sámi festival, and so we used to dance when we were little, and she taught us all the dances and the songs. And so there were a few songs that we had from the family. Every family has their own songs, and then some songs belong to the community, and some songs are individuals. Individuals carry those songs, and so she was the first one to inspire me to sing. The first one was the Lummi morning song that just talks about the spirit of the new day and the rising of the sun and how the light is coming. It says the light is coming and it's sacred. It's a new day. So it's created by the teaching about every new day is a new opportunity. And so in recognition of the sun, you know, in our native cultures, we talk about the morning gods that are bringing up the sun, that the sun comes up through a male and a female morning god. And so every day you have that opportunity to be present and to change and create more positivity and be grateful, having that gratitude for your life and the offerings that are coming toward you from the nature, from the earth, and from your family and so on. So that's.
And who taught you this song?
That one was one of the first songs that I created based on some of our teachings about the morning time, the sacredness of the dawn and the early morning.
So you are the author of the song.
Right, right, song. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Okay, great. So the next song, what is the next song? What you're
So the next song is it's called "The Song for the Sacred Elements," and this one was composed in partnership with my husband Alex Turtle and I, or Alex and I composed it together. And this one is in honor of the elements that give us life. So our Mother Earth and the water, the air, the sun, the moon, the stars, and having that prayer for them so that we can take care of the earth and things can be good for our children and our grandchildren to come. So this is the song it's called "Song for the Sacred Elements."